The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and betrayal. I sat motionless, fingers clutched tightly around the edges of my hospital bed, trying to process the storm that had upended my life in just a few days. My name is Eliza Carter. I'm 24 years old, and I was about to undergo a life-altering surgery, not out of love, not out of choice, but because my parents forced me to donate part of my liver to my older sister, Harper. The same sister who used to slam my head into walls, hide my food, and whisper vile things into my ear when no one else was watching. The same sister who had made my childhood a waking nightmare while our parents turned a blind eye, always brushing it off as sibling rivalry. But this wasn't rivalry. This was abuse. Harper was now 30, and karma, or maybe just a lifetime of reckless choices, had caught up with her. Her liver was failing due to years of alcohol and drug use. She was dying. And yet, the only one in the family with a compatible blood type and health profile to save her, was me. I said no. Repeatedly. Loudly. Desperately. But my parents guilt-tripped me, manipulated me, and even went as far as threatening to cut me off completely, emotionally, financially, everything, if I didn't agree to save Harper. They called me selfish. Ungrateful. Heartless. But how could they ask me to save the very person who broke me? The night before the surgery, I stood in front of the hospital bathroom mirror, eyes hollow, face pale under the cold fluorescent lights. I stared at my reflection and whispered, "Why me?" My best friend, Rachel, had been trying to talk me out of it for days. "Eliza, you don't owe her anything. You don't owe them anything," she said over and over. But I didn't listen. Maybe I still wanted my parents' approval. Maybe I still believed somewhere deep down that if I did this, they'd finally see me. The morning of the procedure, as I signed the consent forms with trembling hands, the nurse mentioned something offhandedly. "As per hospital policy, since this is a living organ donation, we'll do a routine DNA compatibility confirmation just to validate the match." Standard stuff, really. It wasn't the first time I'd heard it, but something about her tone, casual and innocent, lodged in my brain. And that's when everything started to unravel. The surgery was delayed. A couple of hours turned into a day. Then the doctor came in with a look on his face I'll never forget, serious, slightly confused, but calm. "I need to speak with Eliza alone," he said. My parents protested, Harper groaned in her bed nearby, but the doctor insisted. Once we were alone, he took a breath and said gently, "Eliza, the DNA test results came in. You and Harper are not biological sisters. In fact, you're not biologically related at all." I blinked. I don't understand," I stammered. The doctor continued, "You're not a match. Not just in terms of compatibility, genetically, you are from completely different biological families." I sat there, stunned. My heartbeat was pounding in my ears. My whole life, I believed Harper was my sister. My tormentor. And now, she was a stranger. Everything started to make sense. The subtle differences in our appearances that I'd always ignored. The way our parents seemed to favor her unconditionally, no matter what she did. The way I felt like an outsider in my own home. I asked the doctor for copies of the results. He handed them over gently. I stared at the papers, at the glaringly clear evidence, and my world cracked open. When I confronted my parents later that day, their reaction was colder than I could have imagined. My mother pursed her lips and looked away. My father sighed. Harper didn't even lift her head. "So it's true?" I asked, holding the report in trembling hands. "You adopted me? And never told me?" "Not adopted," my father said flatly. "You were left at the hospital. Abandoned. We took you in. Took me in. Like a stray animal. You had nowhere else to go," my mother said with an edge in her voice. "And you should be grateful. We raised you. We fed you. We gave you a home. But you let her abuse me, I whispered, gesturing toward Harper. You treated me like dirt. And now you wanted me to give her my liver. She's our real daughter, my father snapped. Of course we'd do anything to save her. We thought you'd at least be useful for something. Those words seared into my soul. Useful for something. That was all I had ever been to them. I left the hospital that night with Rachel waiting for me outside in her car. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, silent, staring out the window as the city lights blurred past us. Rachel took my hand. You don't deserve this, Eliza. You never did. You're not them. And this doesn't define who you are. For the first time in my life, I believed her. The days that followed were a mix of numbness and slow awakening. I stayed with Rachel and her family for a while. Her mother hugged me like I mattered. Her father asked me how my day was, every single evening. It was strange at first, foreign, but comforting. Healing. Meanwhile, Harper's condition worsened. The hospital tried to find another donor, but time was running out. My parents begged me to reconsider, despite the truth. Forget about the test, my mother said over the phone. You're still her sister in spirit. I hung up on her. I was done bleeding for people who never even cared if I was whole. 1 month later, I started therapy. 3 months later, I applied for a new job out of state, and got it. 6 months later, I received a letter in the mail from a woman named Caroline. She said she believed she might be my birth mother. I nearly didn't open it. But curiosity, or maybe hope, tugged at my heart. I contacted her. We spoke for hours. She had been just a teenager when she gave birth to me, forced by her own parents to give me up at the hospital. She had searched for me every year on my birthday. And now, fate had brought us back together. A year later, I stood at the edge of a quiet lake with Caroline beside me. She held my hand tightly and whispered, "You were never unwanted. You were loved from the moment you were born. I just didn't have the power to keep you." Tears streamed down my face. In that moment, I felt something I never thought I would, peace. I never spoke to Harper or my adoptive parents again. Harper passed away 6 months after the failed transplant attempt. My parents didn't bother to send me the news, I found out through a mutual friend. But I didn't feel guilt. I had spent my whole life being broken down. And finally, I was building myself back up. Not because of them. But in spite of them. Today, I volunteer at a center for abandoned children. I sit with girls who feel unloved and invisible. I tell them they matter. That kindness doesn't always come from family, and sometimes, the most beautiful families are the ones we create ourselves. Because love isn't about blood. It's about truth. And healing begins when you finally believe, you are enough.